For years, millions of fans around the world wondered the same thing. What really happened to Michael Jackson during the final months of his life? The official story has been told countless times. Court records were examined, witnesses testified, doctors were questioned. Yet, for Michael's father, Joe Jackson, the answers never felt complete. Long after the headlines faded, Joe sat down for a revealing interview that stunned many listeners. He spoke openly about the trial of Dr. Conrad Murray, the people he believed had influence over Michael, and the disturbing questions that continued to haunt him after his son's death. Some of his claims were controversial. Others raised questions that still spark debate among fans today. But one thing was clear. Joe Jackson believed there was much more to Michael's story than the public had ever been told. And what he revealed would paint a troubling picture of Michael's final days. Joe Jackson's doubts never went away. When Dr. Conrad Murray was convicted in connection with Michael Jackson's death, many people believed the case had finally reached its conclusion. For Joe Jackson, however, it was only the beginning. Speaking candidly during the interview, Joe acknowledged that justice had been served to a certain degree. He believed prosecutors had done their job, and credited the jury for paying close attention throughout the trial. Yet, despite the verdict, he remained convinced that larger questions had not been answered. According to Joe, too many details surrounding Michael's death simply did not add up. He repeatedly suggested that other individuals may have been involved in circumstances leading up to Michael's passing. To Joe, the story was never just about one doctor. It was about understanding how one of the most famous entertainers in history ended up in such a vulnerable position. What troubled him most was that Michael wasn't personally purchasing or administering the powerful drugs that ultimately played a role in his death. Joe questioned who was providing access, who was overseeing the situation, and why so many warning signs appeared to go unnoticed. As he reflected on those final months, he expressed deep frustration that neither he nor Michael's mother, Catherine, fully understood what was happening behind closed doors. Joe admitted that if Catherine had known the extent of Michael's condition, she would have immediately stepped in. He believed that a mother's instincts would have recognized danger long before tragedy struck. In his view, Michael had become isolated. The people closest to him weren't always family members. Instead, layers of employees, security personnel, advisors, and business associates often stood between Michael and those who cared most about him. That reality continued to haunt Joe. He remembered desperately trying to reach Michael during difficult periods, but encountering barriers that made direct communication nearly impossible. The more he thought about those obstacles, the more suspicious he became. Then came one of the most emotional moments of the interview. Joe recalled watching Dr. Murray being taken into custody. As handcuffs were placed on the doctor's wrists, Joe said he felt that a portion of justice had finally been achieved. But only a portion. Because for him, the bigger picture remained unresolved. He wasn't interested merely in punishment. He wanted answers. And those answers, he believed, extended far beyond a single courtroom verdict. The questions became even more intense when Joe began discussing Michael's final hours. One particular detail continued to bother him. According to Joe, Michael's son Prince reportedly had difficulty recognizing his father when he saw him after his death. Joe repeated claims that Michael's appearance had changed dramatically. To him, this raised serious questions about the timeline of events. He openly wondered whether Michael had been gone longer than official accounts suggested. These suspicions fueled his belief that critical pieces of information had never been fully explained. Whether those concerns were justified or not, they became a major part of Joe's personal search for answers. As years passed, his doubts never disappeared. Instead, they grew stronger. The more he reflected on Michael's final days, the more convinced he became that there were conversations, decisions, and actions occurring behind the scenes that the public had never seen. And if Joe Jackson was right, the story of Michael Jackson's final months was far more complicated than anyone realized. What Joe revealed next would take those suspicions even further, because according to him, powerful people may have been controlling far more of Michael's life than fans ever imagined. As Joe Jackson continued reflecting on Michael's final months, one memory stood above all the others. It was a phone call. A phone call that, according to Joe, still haunted him years later. By 2009, Michael Jackson was preparing for what was supposed to be one of the greatest comebacks in entertainment history. The This Is It concerts had generated enormous excitement around the world. Fans from every corner of the globe were eager to see the King of Pop return to the stage. Initially, the plan was relatively simple. Michael would perform a limited number of shows, satisfy his fans, and then take time to rest. But according to Joe, things quickly changed. The original schedule continued expanding. More dates were added. Then even more dates were announced. Joe believed the growing demands placed tremendous pressure on Michael. He claimed Michael had wanted breaks between performances so he could recover physically and mentally. Instead, the schedule seemed to become increasingly demanding. As the number of concerts grew, Joe became concerned. But it wasn't only the workload that worried him. Money had become another major issue. During the interview, Joe spoke at length about his disagreements with concert promoter Randy Phillips. According to Joe, some of their most heated arguments centered around financial arrangements connected to the tour. Joe recalled confronting Phillips directly. He believed Michael deserved better treatment and felt certain decisions were not being made in Michael's best interests. The arguments became so intense that they created lasting resentment. Years later, Joe still spoke openly about his frustration. He claimed he had repeatedly attempted to raise concerns about what was happening around Michael, but often found himself ignored. Phone calls went unanswered. Meetings never happened. Promises to follow up were never fulfilled. To Joe, it felt like he was being intentionally kept at a distance. The farther away he was pushed, the more suspicious he became. Then came another troubling realization. Joe admitted he had no idea Michael was struggling with severe sleep problems. He didn't know about the extent of the medications. He didn't know about the nightly routines. He didn't know about the desperation that allegedly surrounded Michael's attempts to rest. Learning those details after Michael's death left him devastated. Because in his mind, if the family had known sooner, they might have been able to intervene. They might have been able to help. And perhaps everything would have ended differently. One story Joe shared was especially emotional. Shortly before Michael died, Joe said he learned that Michael had tried to reach him. At first, he was told no contact had been made. But something didn't feel right. So Joe checked his home phone records. What he discovered shocked him. There had indeed been a call. According to Joe, it was Michael's voice. No message was left, no explanation was given, just a call, a brief attempt at contact. For Joe, that unanswered call became one of the most painful memories of his life. He often wondered what Michael wanted to say. Was he looking for advice? Was he trying to escape mounting pressure? Was he searching for someone he could trust? Those questions would never be answered, and that uncertainty only deepened Joe's belief that Michael had been trapped in circumstances beyond his control. The more Joe examined the final months of Michael's life, the more he became convinced that various individuals had gained extraordinary influence over him. He spoke about managers, advisors, business associates, and employees who seemed to control access to Michael. Some of them, Joe believed, were motivated by financial gain. According to Joe, Michael had always tried to make people happy. He hired countless employees. He paid for things many employers would never provide. He trusted people. perhaps too much. Joe believed Michael often assumed loyalty could be earned through generosity. But in reality, not everyone surrounding him shared the same values. As Michael's wealth continued growing, so did the number of people who depended upon him financially. And according to Joe, some of those relationships became unhealthy. He feared that Michael's kindness had made him vulnerable. He described a world where people constantly wanted something from Michael: money, access, influence, opportunity. The demands never seemed to stop. Even after Michael's death, Joe remained convinced that powerful financial interests were still benefiting from his son's legacy. One issue that particularly troubled him was Michael's famous music catalog. Years earlier, Michael had made one of the most significant business decisions in music history by acquiring valuable publishing rights. The purchase eventually generated enormous wealth and transformed Michael into far more than just a performer. He became a powerful businessman. But Joe believed that ownership also created another percent. As the interview drew to a close, Joe Jackson shifted away from the investigations, the court cases, and the unanswered questions that had dominated so much of the conversation. Instead, he focused on the Michael Jackson he knew best. Not the global superstar, not the headline-making celebrity, not the man whose life became the subject of endless scrutiny, but the son he watched grow from a talented young boy in Gary, Indiana, into one of the most recognizable figures in history. For all the controversies that surrounded Michael throughout his life, Joe believed people often overlooked one important fact: Michael genuinely wanted to help others. According to Joe, that desire wasn't something created by fame. It wasn't part of a public relations strategy. It was simply who Michael was. He spoke about Michael's dream of making the world a better place, a message that appeared repeatedly throughout his music, his charitable work, and his public appearances. One dream stood out above all the others. Joe revealed that Michael had hoped to use the profits from the This Is It concerts to help build a children's hospital. It was a goal that reflected the compassion Joe believed had always been part of Michael's character. Throughout his life, Michael spent time visiting hospitals, supporting charities, and meeting children facing serious illnesses. Seeing young people struggle deeply affected him, and Joe said Michael never forgot those experiences. To Michael, success was never just about records sold or tickets purchased. He wanted his success to improve lives. That is how Joe hoped people would remember him: as someone who cared, as someone who tried, as someone who believed the world could be better than it was. Near the end of the interview, Joe delivered a heartfelt message to the millions of fans who had supported Michael throughout his career. He thanked them for standing by the Jackson family through both triumph and tragedy. He acknowledged that Michael's music continued to connect people across cultures, languages, and borders long after his passing. To Joe, that was proof that Michael's influence had never truly disappeared. The man may have been gone, but the message remained. Songs like Heal the World, Man in the Mirror, and We Are the World continued reaching new generations, carrying forward the ideals Michael spent his life promoting. Joe admitted that no one could ever replace Michael Jackson. In his eyes, the world had lost a once-in-a-lifetime entertainer. Yet, he also believed Michael's legacy was larger than music. It lived on through the people he inspired, the artists he influenced, the fans who still celebrate his work, and the countless individuals who found comfort, hope, or motivation through his songs. Even after all the years that had passed, Joe's emotions remained clear. He was still searching for answers, still questioning decisions made during Michael's final months, still hoping that one day every piece of the story would come to light. But beyond the suspicions and controversies, there was something else that remained: A father's pride. Despite everything that happened, Joe Jackson never stopped believing in his son's impact on the world. And whether people agreed with all of his claims or not, one thing was undeniable. Michael Jackson's story continues to fascinate millions because his influence continues to be felt decades later. His music still plays. His performances are still studied. His legacy still sparks conversations around the globe. And as Joe Jackson reminded viewers in this emotional interview, perhaps the greatest tribute anyone can give Michael is to remember the message he spent a lifetime sharing. Care about others, help where you can, and strive to make the world a better place. What do you think about Joe Jackson's revelations regarding Michael's final months? Do you believe there are still unanswered questions surrounding the King of Pop's death? Or has the truth already been revealed? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss our latest stories about music legends, Hollywood icons, and the remarkable lives behind the headlines. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.